So, iceberg charts. They're still a thing, right? No? They're not a trend anymore? Well, fuck it. I made this iceberg chart myself, and you guys are all gonna sit here and watch it because I made this damn video. It's my content. I get to choose what I do. Or, you could click off the video and go watch something else. Anyways, Future is Wild Iceberg.
Welcome to the future!
Future is Wild was a 13-episode documentary series that aired on Discovery Channel and Animal Planet in 2002, created by Joanna Adams and Dojal Dixon. Dojal Dixon is kind of well known in the speculative evolution community, and we will be talking about him a lot more later on in this iceberg. The series focuses on the evolution of life in the future of Earth with 3 different time periods, 5 million years, 100 million years, and 200 million years, being examined, and the various organisms and environments that inhabit them. The series was a big hit and generally well liked, and ended up kickstarting the Future is Wild franchise, which surprisingly is still going on. The Future is Wild: A Natural History of the Future is a book written by Joanna Adams and Dojal Dixon, series creators. The book is basically a retelling of the events of the series, though some minor events are changed and expanded upon. It's pretty similar to books like the Walking with Dinosaurs and Walking with Beasts adaptations, which existed back in the day. And while I haven't read it, it seems like an interesting little book. The Future is Wild was a cartoon series that aired on Discovery Kids in the US that lasted for one 26-episode season between 2006 and 2007. The basic premise of the show involves a girl from the future traveling further into the future to try and find a home for humanity as a massive ice age is threatening humanity's status back in their time. Along the way, she ends up recruiting 3 kids from the 21st century, as well as a squibbin that stows away upon the ship. The show isn't brought up very fondly in the Future is Wild fandom, and that's because the animals talk.
Yo, fish face. Huh? I thought I told you to stay out of my territory.
Your territory? Hey, it's a free swamp.
Not if I was here first.
Yeah, pretending to be a log, whereas I was actually swimming like a fish. So, you were the first log, I was the first fish.
Like, this isn't even just like an occasional thing that happens. Like, in almost every episode, the animals talk. As a result, the show ends up kind of wasting its admittedly pretty interesting premise on goofy animal comedy that ends up just getting old. The show isn't very easy to find nowadays. Finding it on YouTube is pretty hard, and there was no DVD release unless you live in Germany, and even then, that DVD didn't have all the episodes. That being said, the show is apparently on Tubi and Amazon Prime if you really need to watch it, so there is that. I think this is pretty well known amongst people who've seen the series at this point, but the US broadcast of the show on Animal Planet was quite different from the UK version. Instead of being split into 13 episodes, it was instead presented as a single 90-minute program, which meant that a lot of stuff had to either be straight up removed or very heavily condensed. Another notable difference between the two versions is that in this version, humanity is not extinct, but has simply traveled to the stars in order to start a civilization somewhere else. As far as I know, this Animal Planet version isn't available on DVD, though it can be found pretty easily online.
Honey, why don't you go outside and get me an egg?
Okay, Mommy. Mommy, is this one big enough?
Animal Planet's The Future is Wild returns with brand new futuristic beasts. See how the animals of today will become the creatures of tomorrow. The Future is Wild, a new series beginning Tuesday at 9, only on Animal Planet.
The Future is Wild 2, or as it was sometimes called, The Future is Wilder, I really hope that if this series ever comes out, they don't use that title, was a proposed follow-up to The Future is Wild, intended for a 2009 to 2010 release. According to Dojal Dixon, the necessary funding for it had actually been raised, but the Discovery Channel pulled the plug on the project as they wanted to focus more on reality TV and not documentary. Okay, Dixon's wording is meaner than mine, but that's basically what he meant. Some concepts from this did make it into the VR game. The Future is Wild VR is an in-development VR game being developed by Studio CG artists, with series creators Joanna Adams and Dojal Dixon actually part of the project. The game itself was first announced back in 2016 on Reddit, though funnily enough, the initial Reddit post was banned because it was believed by those who moderated the Reddit that it was a scam. Nevertheless, later the same year, we got some more information about the game, revealing that it was going to be a exploration game with survival elements and would have featured 20 new creatures as well as those from the original series. It also would have featured 4 separate time periods to explore, these including 100 million years and 200 million years from the original series, but also the newly created 20 and 50 million years, because there is no love for 5 million years in this franchise. While the VR game has had some hiccups, it was announced as still being in development in 2019, and apparently is intending to be released as part of a major brand relaunch for The Future is Wild. I don't know, maybe it'll be good? I kind of doubt it. Future is Wild comic version, World Life After 200 Million Years of Evolution, what a mouthful, is a manga series illustrated by Takaki Ogawa, who also did a manga version of Dojo Dixon's The New Dinosaur, so he knows his speculative evolution. Future is Wild is pretty popular in Japan, so it makes sense that it would get a manga adaptation. The series ran for 8 issues between 2006 and 2007 in the magazine Manga Action, before being compiled together into a single release in 2007. These stories are basically just short vignettes focused on the creatures and environments in the series. While the only available languages right now are Japanese and Korean, the website claims that it is going to be translated into other languages. Another interesting thing about this manga is that it actually features several organisms that don't appear in any other adaptation of the series. The Future is Wild, The Living Book is a book written once again by Joanna Adams and Dojo Dixon, released on iOS in 2014. It's very similar to the original book written back when the show came out, but it has some new text and some AR features, which is cool, I guess, but not gonna make me buy it. The Wild World of the Future is a book written by Claire Pye and released in 2003 as a tie-in to the show. It's similar to the other books written here, but it's intended for younger audiences, so I only included it on here because it is a piece of spin-off merchandise for the franchise. Look, I had to fill up this iceberg somehow. In 2006, a set of figures based on The Future is Wild were released. The setting consisted of the Mega Squid, Gannet Whale, Terabyte, Toraton, Terra Killer, Ocean Slish, and a secret Poggle figure. Oh, and they were never released outside Japan. I mean, these things don't look amazing by any extent, but it sucks that we don't get them over here. The Future is Wild, The Full Dome Show was a Full Dome show that first aired in 2004, and actually currently still is occasionally in rotation at the Kingman Museum in Michigan, making it one of the very few spin-off properties of The Future is Wild that is still around. The program does have a couple of errors, for instance placing the Bumble Beetle and the Beetle in a central desert, or putting the Silver Spider inside of Terabyte hives, but overall it looks okay. Nothing amazing, but like, it's cool that this is actually still running. The Anima du Future, translating literally to The Animals of the Future, I really hope I pronounced that correctly, was a dark ride at the French theme park Futuriscope. Okay, they have to have picked it because of that name. Opening in 2008, the ride used AR technology to recreate animals from the series, as well as featuring physical models of the creatures in the pre-ride area. The ride temporarily closed in 2009 for renovations, but fully shut down in 2012. There were also 2 apps that could be downloaded from the ride's website, but these are also no longer available. There were 2 pieces of merchandise created for this ride, a jeton, basically a token, and a Poggle plush, which I want, but is probably not available anymore. Translating to Devil's Canyon Dinosaur Park, because there is no way I'm pronouncing that. This is a model park in Germany, which features large concrete dinosaur models, which is awesome, and I really wish that the US had more of these. In 2016, they added a section with 16 models of Future is Wild creatures. These models had actually been created for another park in 2012, Dino Park Munchenhagen. I really hope I pronounced that right, but were later moved to here in an outdoor area, and as far as I know, they're actually still up. At some point after the series was released, Warner Brothers picked up the rights to create a documentary film based on The Future is Wild, but by 2009 it had been canceled. Why? James Cameron's Avatar. Yet another thing we can blame Avatar for. Yes, this movie was so big that the producers of The Future is Wild thought that there was no way they could ever make anything that compares to it, which led to the movie's cancellation. Now, a movie could still possibly happen, considering that eyeing the idea that they want to rebrand The Future is Wild, but let's face it, it's not going to happen. And even if it does, has the Walking with Dinosaurs movie taught us nothing?
Dad!
From 2010 to 2011, an exhibit at the Sydney Aquarium was opened that was based on The Future is Wild, with both animal models and AR experiences. And that's about as much as I could dig up on this exhibit, so... The Future is Wild had a CD-ROM game released in 2006 intended for use in schools. The game has a number of educational elements as well as viewable animal models and a free roaming mode. I couldn't find very much information on this game, and in fact, one of the few websites that had information on it caused my antivirus software to act up, so... In Jean Rameau Park in France, there's just a random statue of a cryptile there. Anyone who knows The Future is Wild will get a little chuckle out of this, but anyone who doesn't will probably be like, why the fuck is there a lizard statue here? Apparently this isn't even the only statue in the park, there's also apparently a fucking unicorn roaming around. The Future is Wild, the Evolution game, sometimes just called the Future is Wild app, was an app intended for a release in 2015. The app would have allowed you to take control of various creatures from the show, as well as create your own future creatures and try to get them to adapt to the various environments. Think Spore, but more realistic. The game would have also apparently used AR hotspots, which Pokemon Go would also later use, but it was ultimately cancelled for unknown reasons. There was also another app based on The Future is Wild apparently in development that was intended for a 2014 release, but it was also cancelled. In 2016, Vanguard Films announced that they were intending to make a sci-fi action series based on The Future is Wild. Name doesn't sound familiar? Well, maybe you'll recognize them from their animated classics like Valiant, and Spaceship, and Happily Never After. Oh god. Anyway, since that, there has been literally no word on this, so whether or not this cartoon is still in development is unknown. Afterman, The Zoology of the Future was a book written by Dojo Dixon, released in 1981, which could be considered the beginning of the speculative evolution genre. While Dixon didn't start it, it was definitely one of the kickstarters for the genre as a whole. The book itself was very well received and received 2 sequels in a sort, The New Dinosaurs and Alternative Evolution, and Man After Man, An Anthropology of the Future, which I actually did an audiobook reading of back when I had the shittiest microphone in all of existence. Anyways, DreamWorks ended up buying the rights to Afterman with an attempt to make an animated film based on it. Do you know how much money I would have given to see an animated film based on Afterman done by DreamWorks? Traditionally animated DreamWorks, that is. However, the movie never really went anywhere, and in 2008, the rights ended up being sold to Paramount, who also haven't done with anything with them since. In fact, the only thing that really result from this was that while The Future is Wild was in production, they were told to change the design of the gannet whale because apparently it was originally going to be a giant penguin like the Vortex and Porpin from Afterman, but they were told they couldn't do that, so they had to scrap that idea. While The Future is Wild is still pretty well liked, a number of criticisms towards it have popped up both at the time and the years since. As they should. Nothing is free from criticism. Most of these focus on the implausibility of a number of the designs. For instance, the Death Gleaner taking this role of scavenging birds when scavenging birds should easily be able to take that role. The Spink taking the role of burrowing mammals when burrowing mammals should easily take that role. The near extinction of all mammals by 100 million years, which is seen as laughable. The Toroton being so huge, yet having very few adaptations to be that huge. The near extinction of all vertebrates by 200 million years, and the flying fish and giant squids of the 200 million year times, which are probably the most criticized aspects of the series as a whole. I do love me the Mega Squid, but even I have to admit its design is pretty ridiculous. The Titan Dolphin is the first original creature created for the VR game, and to say that its design was not very well liked is an understatement. The thing makes no sense anatomy-wise, and it's just a general plot hole due to its existence, as the series had previously established that cetaceans were all extinct by 5 million years. The Titan Dolphin apparently originated from a concept for the second series of the show, but even there it looks pretty ridiculous. Because of the hatred towards the design, a lot of people have tried to redesign it to look more plausible. And funnily enough, Dojo Dixon himself, who bear in mind is on the project that's making this thing, actually had some criticisms of the design too, and even designed his own more realistic version, which, while it's still damn ugly, at least looks more plausible than this. So in the 100 million year segment of the series, we are introduced to an animal called the Great Blue Windrunner, a descendant of cranes that has developed a second set of wings along its legs in order to give itself more lift. Many people have compared this to the small gliding dinosaur Microraptor, which was discovered a couple of years before the series aired. However, according to Dojo Dixon himself, ornithologist, paleontologist, and secret vampire, seriously look at him, he never ages, Phil Curry, actually came up with the design as early as 1988, which means that there is no way this thing was based on Microraptor. This is mostly a cracked fan theory, but I wanted to include it on here anyways. Basically, it's been pointed out by the end of the series that most of the terrestrial fauna on Earth is descended from sea life due to post-apocalyptic conditions having wiped out the previous terrestrial fauna, with the dominant species being descended from squids. Then in 2015, Nintendo comes out with Splatoon, a game which has an apocalyptic world in which sea life took over the role of terrestrial creatures due to the previous apocalypse, and the dominant organisms are descended from squids. Now, this is probably just a coincidence, but hear me out. Future is Wild is very popular in Japan. Splatoon is a Japanese series. So maybe... No, it's not possible. It's a coincidence. Or is it?